Futureproof is sponsored by Carrot Events, showcasing your company values with high impact bespoke events. Hello and welcome back from the break. Thank you for staying with me, Sarah Hopwood, as I continue these programs talking about future proofing. And today I'm talking about habits, the importance of habits, of creating good habits, breaking our old habits. And in the first half I was saying we are the average of the top 5 people that we spend our time with. So if you're not happy with some of your habits, then it could be that you're actually in the wrong community, and we need to look at that and make changes if they are necessary. The other thing too about habits is it's easier to form habits and it's harder to actually break them. But there is hope, and I remember being inspired once when somebody said if a habit isn't too bad you can break it in 21 days. If it is quite a deep-rooted habit, then you've probably got a good month and then you can break it. And I just love that because it gives us hope. Sometimes we just feel that we're stuck and there's no way out, but I want you to be inspired and say if you have any habits that you'd rather not have, if the person that you loved had the same habit, then you would want to do something to help them, then please be inspired and know there is hope. The thing though about breaking habits is when you stop something, then obviously you're then leaving a gap in it. So let's say I have 15 cups of coffee a day, which is a bad habit, so I need to stop having so many cups of coffee, then it leaves a gap at the times I would have normally had one. And so we must make sure that we think, okay, when I stop this bad habit, what am I going to put in the place? What is going to sit in that gap? And if you think of people who've given up smoking before, yes, we've had the nicotine patches and other things like that. But the other thing too is often people say it's actually about having the cigarette in my hand, and that's what I miss. The habit is not just the drawing and the inhaling on the cigarette, but it's also the habit of holding something in my hand whilst I have a drink, a cup of coffee or whatever else. And so often you'll see people pick up and have a pen in their hand instead. So what they've done is they've stopped the habit by having the cigarette, but they've replaced it with something else, which actually helps them break the habit that they're looking to break. So do bear that in mind if you're breaking a bad habit. It is possible, don't feel it's not. And also when there's a gap, make sure that you put what you want in that gap. If you don't actively choose what to put in that gap, then all you'll do is auto default back to the habit, or indeed just maybe replace it without thinking and then realize you've now replaced it with something that is just as bad. So in the smoking world, one might say, okay, you stopped the cigarettes, but you've now replaced it with e-cigarettes, which actually isn't any better for you. So, make sure you put something that you choose for yourself that goes into that gap. So in the first half, I was talking about Stephen Covey and talking about the 7 habits of highly effective people. And I just want to say a little bit more about that. So, when he breaks down the word responsibility and turns it around and says, that is our ability to respond. So being proactive is looking at our ability to respond to what is going on around us. And before now, in an earlier program, I've talked about locus of control, which is place of control, which is Julian Rotter's paper, another American psychologist, saying that in business there are 2 thinkers, different types of thinkers: internal locus of control and external locus of control. And I don't want to go into it now, but all these programs can actually be found on Business Sense and Emotional Intelligence YouTube channel. So if you wanted to go and find that, then you can. But the point is that for an internal locus of control person, there is a choice box where you can go in there and you can make a decision as to what you want to do. So you're not reacting all the time, you're not knee-jerking, you are proactively making a decision, and that's a very, very powerful place to be. But be warned, in that box there are things there that would normally undermine you, perhaps some of your habits as well, maybe some bad habits that you've got around fear. Fear is paralyzing you and stopping you moving forward. Rejection, anger, guilt, jealousy, some of those things can really affect your way of thinking. So you need to maybe address some of those before you make that decision. If you make a jealous decision, it's almost guaranteed the result is not going to be what you actually want. The other thing too is beginning with the end in mind, which we've talked about, and that's all about the visioning. And in a business, it's so important that we have that vision that we can then communicate to the workforce. And it's been said that everything that happens twice. It happens here first, and then it plays out and happens. So there's another saying, the body never goes where the mind hasn't been first. And so we've got to make sure that what we visualize, what we picture is linked to our value system, is linked to the purpose of the business, is linked to win-win, so that once we visualize it and we then, I think, commend it to the subconscious. I think of the subconscious as like the parrot on the pirate's shoulder, and that has the picture of where you're heading and what you want to do. And before now, when I've talked about lying, I've even said to people, picture that subconscious as a parrot on your shoulder, and when you say, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean that, the parrot goes, yes you did, I remember you doing it, that's what you thought, you meant to stick your foot out and trip them up. And it really keeps me in check over my behaviour, imagining this subconscious on my shoulder correcting me anytime I'm trying to mislead myself, yet alone other people. But definitely begin with the vision, and yes, and make sure that your ladder is against the right wall. Really important. I did talk about the win-win. We should always strive for win-win. If we don't strive for win-win, then the auto default will actually be lose-lose. The only thing that synergizes is win-win. So very important. Part of that win-win is tied up with abundant mentality. Do you have a feeling that if in order for me to win, it means that you have to lose? Or do you believe in your mind that there is plenty out there for every single person? So in other words, I don't have to take from you in order for me to win, because there is plenty for everybody. I love people tied up with creative thinking who say, can you imagine that anything that is supposed to be invented, designed, made, imagine it floating around in the universe. It is already there. It's already there for the taking. There is an abundance of it. And if it hasn't been invented yet, then it just means that somebody hasn't grabbed it down and put their name on it. And I really love that. The opposite of abundant mentality is scarce mentality. We can see that so often. I mean, even when I've been on holiday and the all-inclusive, scarce mentality, you can see it where people are piling their plates up with so much food that they can't even eat. Before now, I've stood behind someone in a breakfast queue that took 7 rolls, and they ended up getting up and leaving some of them on the table, went outside and then joined the queue for the burger stand, because they just had this sort of scarce mentality, and it's this kind of grabbing and pulling to myself, and it comes across as greed. That's what it looks like. But if we think as the psychologists do, then I think if they had abundant mentality, and the abundant mentality would say there will always be enough for me, there will always be enough, I do not need to grab and pull as much as I can towards me, because there's always going to be enough, then you won't see them hoarding and filling their plates. That said, though, we have to be mindful of people who have had and have lost before, and and also poverty-stricken places where food and resources are scarce. And I know, I've worked in care homes, I've worked with the elderly, and you can tell all those who were severely affected by the rationing in the war, they will, in their bedside tables, under their beds, under their pillows, as they've got older, they have done everything they can to to hold on and save everything that they've got because they were so badly affected by rationing. So please just take what I'm saying as just a platform for discussion and self-discussion. Maybe ask ourselves, oh, am I really going to lose everything if I don't grab and take this now? Or if I come back in the room tomorrow, will there still be enough? So seeking to understand first is very biblical, and I think that's something that we all know, but we don't always practice it. Synergy, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and value differences and diversity. And I just want to say a little bit more about sharpening your sword, and that is about sharpening your own sword, developing your own personal growth. Don't say that you're too busy, and also just the importance of life balance. We do need life balance, but remember, it always moves. If you always have peace, if you always have stillness, if you always have just no conflict or any anxiety in your life, no stress, then you will automatically create it, because as human beings we do need a bit of that iron on iron, and sword on sword.